Trade war. Well, as the kind of slow growth and the persistent unemployment continues to play out, there is more and more pressure to do something on the trade front. And, we saw at the G20 there was kind of like good things and bad things. The good thing was that there was at least a discussion about how big your trade deficit should be compared to your GDP. So that if you're kind of in the zone, you're okay. If you're outside the zone, try to get it back inside the zone. So obviously all of this is focused on China. So you think that the US has got a big trade deficit compared to GDP. When you look at the Chinese surplus compared to GDP, it's much larger in proportional terms. And people are throwing around the 4% level, strategically chosen because the US deficit is 3.8%. So we're just inside the range. So there's a lot of pressure to do something about these imbalances. And it is true in a floating exchange rate system that the Chinese currency would be revalued. The Chinese don't want to float their currency because they're afraid of the volatility that it could cause via speculative attacks and things that we've seen in the past. So they want something stable. I understand that. But it's also the case that, as a result of this, we've got kind of persistent imbalances. And this is not something that, if the Chinese revalued by 30% tomorrow, that's not going to solve the US trade deficit immediately. It takes a while to work this stuff through. So I do think that we're going to see, because of the economic situation in the US, we'll have our midterm elections, some things are going to change, and there's going to be pressure to do things on the trade front. And this is not uncommon in kind of dark economic situations. This is exactly what happens. Is it a good thing? No. A trade war, everybody loses. Like, everybody agrees that trade is a good thing. When you survey economists, that's the one thing that they agree upon. It's almost a theorem that it's best to specialize and trade. But that assumes fair trade. Okay, so fair trade is a good thing. But if the deck is stacked against you with one government basically subsidizing, then that doesn't seem fair. So it's going to be more and more pressure. The good thing is, in a trade war, the US wins. Just like it wins in terms of whatever it's going to do in terms of quantitative easing, they're going to win. Because the US is de facto the numeric currency in the world. It is the strongest economy in the world. And it's going to be really hard to defeat the US in some money printing exercise. So the US has got a lot of bargaining power. So I think that we are headed for a lot more trade stress. Let's put it that way. I doubt that any US president would want to do something like Herbert Hoover did with the Smoot-Hawley tariff. But there will be pressure to get things onto a more level playing field.
Can you be any more specific?
If this was my full-time job, I would have a lot of specific suggestions. So in terms of the sort of measures that might be taken, so I think we'll see probably over the next year a lot of pressure for China to revalue at least by 10%, okay, which would be pretty significant, or else. So that we're going to start hearing that. And so far, we haven't. And China's got to be careful because they're sitting on a lot of US cash, effectively, short-term bonds. So let's see if they play ball. It is in China's best interest for the US economy to be growing at a rate greater than 2%. Okay, so we buy their goods. So if the US is in a prolonged period of slow growth, and there's lots of stuff coming down the line. So we've got all of these foreclosures that are coming that we'll talk about a little later. We've got the EUC, the extended benefits for unemployment. The maximum you can get is 99 weeks. People are falling off that. So all of a sudden, they don't get that. So that's going to be a hit in demand given the number of people that are unemployed. So I think that given the soft economic situation, there's going to be, more of this noise, more of the trade noise.